Today we're going to be covering the meta of Warzone, and we're going to be covering all kinds of different aspects from long range, close range, non-overkill, sniper support, and everything in between. And we're going to be focusing on the best of the best. Obviously, there's a lot of viable things that might not necessarily make it into this video, but there are a lot of great options to choose from, at least within the current meta that kind of nerfed the Krig, messed around with the Pharah, and a few other changes along the way. Enjoy the video, learn something new. Please do me a favor, hit the like button if you're brand new, want to find your way back. Double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. One quick thing I will mention is that these things, I didn't expect them to change because we got a surprise update out of nowhere. In this particular case, I thought we were going to be good at least until the next season because they usually have a little bit of gap in there. So I've kind of solved something for that, and we'll talk about that aspect throughout the video so you'll pretty much always know what the meta is, even if I don't put out a video right away. And side note, this video is sponsored. Today's video is sponsored by Casetify, a company who makes high quality iPhone cases with a ton of variety to choose from, as well as customization. They're much more protective than your cheaper Amazon alternatives, engineered with a 2-layer construction of Chi-Tech material. The impact cases are drop test approved for 6.5 feet, and the ultra impact cases are approved up to 9.8 feet. Like I said, they come in many designs, so you can pick your favorite color or print for your case to match with your phone and your style. You can even place your own monogram or name on there as well. And regardless if you go with the impact or the ultra impact, phone cases are made with 50% recycled materials and shipped to you in 100% compostable packaging printed with eco-friendly ink. They also have something called Defensify microbial coating, which eliminates 99% of bacteria by preventing the growth of microbes and preventing bacteria from sticking to the surface in the first place. And if you're looking to upgrade to iPhone 13, you should definitely check out Casetify, because when you get a brand new phone, you'll definitely need a case for it. And on top of that, with all the great customizable options, there are also a great gift for friends and family. So if you're interested in checking out Casetify as part of this sponsorship, if you click the link near the top of the description, you'll get 15% off at checkout. Thank you to Casetify for sponsoring this video. Welcome back. So there's several aspects that you generally want to consider when you're talking about long range meta, close range, sniper support, all those various things, is how they're going to complement each other, because generally you want an overkill class setup where you can kind of combine those. And then if you don't go overkill and maybe you pick up a pistol right off the bat, what do you combine that with to have the maximum effectiveness in terms of being able to handle different situations, at least until you can pick up one off of someone maybe you take out. So normally the most important 3 things generally are ease of use. How hard is it to actually use? Is there any kind of skill gap? Generally with COD, this is very low barrier to entry. Like, most of the guns are fairly easy to use. So then you have that one. Then you got to go and combine it. How competitive is the TTK, which is another aspect. And then is there anything that will dramatically hold this weapon back? So whether it's super slow, 10-second reload, maybe the mag is only 10 bullets, whatever. There's a lot of those various things. And then once you consider all those, you can kind of figure out how you're going to complement each other. And what we end up finding out is that when it comes to long range options, there's a lot of great options, but the top of the top will have a select few. Same thing with SMGs. They end up nerfing the OTS. So people are like, oh man, is the OTS still good? Yeah, it's still good, but it is really going to come down to what you like to use. AK-74U, actually pretty okay if you kind of deck it out for ADS speed, but overall you might get finessed by someone using a Mac 10. Even though statistically it doesn't kill the fastest, it has the insane mobility, allow you to outplay your opponent, which is kind of like a little bit of an X factor in there when it comes to close range. And then one thing I don't normally talk about, which I'm going to include in this video, is shotguns. How are you going to go ahead and combine shotguns into a particular loadout so they best complement what you're using? Because at the end of the day, you do want to be able to have that competitive where, hey, maybe it's close quarters, and then you're going to combine that with the mid to long range option for a rifle. And so that's going to limit you. Maybe you're not going to put an LMG with the shotgun typically, because then maybe when you get caught reloading one of them, you kind of get screwed. So we'll talk a little bit about that. LMGs are kind of in a nasty spot right now, especially the Stoner and the MG82. And then we got tactical rifles. Even though they kind of modified it, the DMR is still kind of broken, but it's a little bit higher skill gap. But you will delete people. Marksman rifles, not really a place other than the Kar 98. Sniper rifles kind of have those other ones. Most of the sniper rifles are generally viable, but it's going to come down to preference. And then obviously there's always like the trolley class. If you want to run a riot shield, restock stuns with Cali sticks, or you want to use the brand new size or whatever the case is, you have that option to pretty much use those things. What I've done differently with this video compared to my top loadout videos, I've actually decided to add another tab to the spreadsheet that is linked near the top of the description, where we'll actually be able to click on it. It'll just say Meta September 21st, which is today of me making the video. And then you'll be able to go in there, and it's a little bit more simplified than a loadout for every gun that's viable and TTKs and all that. It's very simplified, and it focuses on different aspects that are currently meta. Obviously, I could expand this to 10 weapons per category, but that gets a little bit too much, especially if somebody just wants to use generally what's best. So right here we have the ranged option. We have the stoner, which I think is the #1 right now. It just kills way too quick and is still way too easy to use, even after the changes they've made to the recoil. The MJ82, heavily slept on. It deletes, very fast TTK, have open bolt delays for both of the LMGs, but it doesn't really matter as much at range. And then we have XM4, which is still a pretty solid option, especially in Iron Trials. Cold War AK, this thing shoots relatively easy in terms of recoil control. You don't really have to manage it as much. And then a little bit of higher skill is the C58 and the EM2, but those things hit hard like a truck, especially if you're like a AMAX fan from previously, you like that style of weapon. EM2, C58 are very nasty. Can get a little bit tricky when you're trying to shoot at somebody like 170 meters or whatever, but that's kind of how it goes. You pick the various optic that you like. We have the various barrels, and a lot of these are pretty much built the same way because generally, even though we have 70 attachments per weapon or whatever, it's really the illusion of choice. We know that we tend to narrow on the same 5 to 7 attachments per weapon. Maybe you don't like the Gru suppressor, you put the regular 45 round versus 60. Spetsnaz grip versus bruiser or something like that, or no grip, and then you bit faster aim down sight. And that's kind of how that stacks out. So these would be my top 6 for long range, which would be Stoner, MG82, XM4, Cold War AK, C58, EM2. Then the close range, you can kind of push some of these up or down depending on preference. But one of the things is you got the Mag 10E here. Damage per mag is still not amazing, so you really have to be able to finesse, or you're just not going to be a big fan of the Mag 10. Crazy high fire rate, so it's super forgiving, but you can run out of bullets pretty quickly. But it's still a pretty good close to medium range option because its recoil isn't all that crazy. OTS, still pretty good. It's more of a barrel stuffing weapon. You can kind of finesse a little bit, get a quick reload. Damage per mag isn't all that great, especially since they modified the headshot, chest shot, stomach shot to basically be balanced a little bit more so you don't get as many insta-kills. So that one's still pretty good, but close range. Bullfrog is probably going to be the most versatile for most situations, most players, most modes. Overall, Bullfrog is a solid option, easy to use, and it doesn't put you as in many sticky situations. You don't have to rely as much on mobility because you have enough ammo where you can just down multiple people, especially if you go with the bigger mag in there. Then the Gallo, I don't usually talk about shotguns too much because I don't want to encourage that, but it is very broken, especially if you're doing duos or less. Trios a little bit borderline. You got to get good with those throwing knives so you're not wasting ammo on thirsting, and it gives you enough time. Also, your pacing, you got to kind of have those pauses where you get the chance to reload the full 12-round tube, and you're good to go. PPSH is still another solid option. Personally, it doesn't have that X factor where you get headshots and you'll kill faster. It just has a reliable, decent TTK with some solid movement. Damage per mag is kind of nice because you can get a 55 where it doesn't penalize you in any way, or you can go with the 71 round drum mag, which is kind of nutty to take on multiple people. You get a quick reload, and you have enough for the entire situation. You're good. And then we have the Jack 12, which is disgusting, especially for holding an angle as somebody's about to push you. It's probably one of the best. The downside is it does lack a little bit of mobility, so that's why I said you're more used for holding it. That's why it comes down to play style. If you're an aggressive player, Jack 12 might not necessarily be for you quite as much as the Gallo, but we'll talk a little bit about the Gallo as well. And then, like I said, the DMR is disgusting, and it can be used as a close to medium range, especially after they modified the recoil, which actually allows you to get close to that trigger cap without having an insane recoil that you can't actually control. So Obviously, depending on playstyle, it's going to be important. For the Gallo, one thing to point out is if you are an auto tac sprint user, you don't want to be able to spam the shotgun. So no stock probably won't work for you. You got to use the combat stock, which is the aim down sight, and you have some crazy mobility while aim down sight. If you go hip fire, you're not worried about auto tac sprint, or you know how to move with auto tac sprint so you don't tac sprint, whether it's strafing, backpedaling, or whatever. The no stock is a great option because you get immediate sprint to fire, essentially compared to without that. And then that's kind of where that one sits, depending on preference. And then we go over here to the snipers, and pretty much, you know, the ZRG is good, all the SPR, all these, whatever. The top two snipers, without debate, this is what everyone's using, is Kar 98 or Swiss, and it really comes down to preference. I don't like the zoom of the Swiss, so I prefer the Kar 98, but there's people who prefer the Swiss because of the damage profile where you get that upper chest damage, and it does like 180 versus the 60 or whatever the Kar 98 does. And then pretty much you just build those out, and regardless if you want a more quick scope, you go with the sport comb. If you want a little bit more precision comb where it doesn't have as much idle sway, you can go with that, and then you don't really even have to hold your breath. Then where it gets a little bit tricky and it's kind of narrowed down, especially we had a lot more options. I think with the Milano, I don't know why they dusted the Milano. I think the Milano should have still been in this, but it just doesn't kill that quick. And there's not a lot of SMGs that have low enough recoil and range and bullet velocity. It just kind of makes it a little bit trickier. AK-74U might be able to fit in the sniper support category, but you're almost always going to be better going off with the AK-47. You built it out a specific way where these have optics. And then they're kind of faster, so you use a smaller mag so you don't get penalized as much. And then you do something to help speed up the ADS speed, whether it's the Serpent Grip or the Elastic Wrap. And then we have Cold War AK, which in my opinion is hands down the most effective one. It's just very penalizing, especially if somebody hard jumps in front of you. You can't afford to miss those. If they're using a Mac 10 OTS, you will likely lose the gunfight just because it is so unforgiving because of the 600 RPM fire rate, but it is what it is. PPSH, great in that close range, and still effective at a little bit further range, but it kind of just depends on what your situation looks like. And the XM4, pretty good, just doesn't kill as quick up close, so it's a little bit better at that mid to long range. You just got to be aware of, hey, am I going to push this building or not? EM2 struggles the same way the AK-47 does, but it has a little bit more recoil, and the damage output is a little bit higher, so it's kind of nasty. And then we have the secondary option, which means basically you can grab one of the primaries with this, so you can get Ghost, Tempered, Restock, High Alert, or whatever you want, right? M19s, you go akimbo, 5 milliwatt monolithic. The reason you go with the monolithic over a barrel is because the Modern Warfare engine, if you use barrels on Modern Warfare weapons, it actually spreads out your hip fire. And especially since you're going to be in akimbo, you don't want to worsen your hip fire. So you go with the monolithic over a barrel. And then amp, if you like the single, you can go that route. I think this is great for duos and below. Trios, it can get a little tricky. You can still get a fast reload. But ideally with either of these, you're looking to get a kill, and whoever you killed, they will likely have one of these meta options, and then you'll go ahead and go that route and pick it up, and you'll be good to go. So that's kind of how that works. And ideally, the M19s and the AMP, what I would be combining those with is probably like the XM4, Cold War AK, C58, EM2. Something that can also do well at close range, get a decent reload, and you can get back into an engagement. I would not necessarily use these options as much with the MG82 or the Stoner, just because of the reload situation. These aren't versatile enough at the mid-range where you're going to be able to kind of do anything. Maybe the amp a little bit if somebody's like one shot or something, but in general, you need something that is available for mid to long range and not just long range like we're going to have with LMGs. I've included this as part of the spreadsheet. If you kind of want to venture outside of any of this stuff and figure out, hey, you know what's viable? You can go to the TTK compared section, scroll all the way down, and then what I've done is it actually does a color coding. What is in green is better, and what is in red is a little bit worse. And you can kind of look at the individual categories of what is there. Obviously, the Fennec's cool, but the ammo is a situation where it kind of has some issues there, even though they haven't really fixed the bullet velocity, I don't believe. ASVAL, ammo situation. Cold War MP5, Modern Warfare MP5. Still pretty good up close, but you might as well use the OTS. There's a lot of different options. You pick what you enjoy. Some people are going to use the growl and the kilo. More power to you. This is why we cover what's meta, because this is like the most effective stuff currently available in the game in its current state. If you enjoyed the video, learned something new, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, just double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.